Everyone's chasing ground up multifamily development. Here's why converting struggling hotels might be the smarter play in 2025. Look, I get asked this question all the time. Andrew, what makes a hotel actually worth converting? Andrew, could you convert my hotel? And here's the truth. Most people miss this, by the way. Not every struggling hotel is a conversion opportunity, and not every conversion opportunity is a struggling hotel. In this video, there's a specific formula that separates a value add gold mine from a money pit that'll drain your capital, crush your dreams, and your returns. Today, I'm breaking down the exact criteria I use when evaluating hotel conversion opportunities. These are the same filters that have helped me identify and convert 4 properties and avoid dozens of terrible deals. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to look for and what to run away from as fast as you possibly can. Let's dive in. Location matters more than condition. Say it with me. Location matters more than condition. First things first, location and market size. The sweet spot? Metropolitan statistical areas, or MSAs, with 1 million or more people in the greater combined area. Can you go smaller? Yeah, for sure. I've seen successful conversions in smaller MSAs. I've seen stuff done under 500,000 population, but it's not recommended. Below 500,000 in population, you're entering risky territory. The demand fundamentals just aren't there to support stabilized occupancy post conversion. There are exceptions to that, by the way. Here's my personal filter, and this is gold. So use this whenever you're looking for your next deal. I love properties that are nearby or close within let's say 5 square miles of a Costco, Sam's Club, major hospitals, airports, A-class retail like Starbucks or Trader Joe's, universities, shopping centers, or malls. Why? Because these anchors tell you that people are going there. They're demand generators. If your hotel sits in the middle of nowhere with tumbleweeds rolling by, that's a hard pass. Average household income in the area, something that I look for is $80,000 or more. It's not always easy to hit. Arizona's around $96,000 or $97,000, but you need enough income to justify market rate rents post conversion. Now remember, these are small studios, so you really need to make sure that you're in the right area with the right demographic of people. And here's something nobody talks about. City initiatives. Is your city desperate for affordable housing? Are they actively trying to solve a housing crisis? That's your opening. But if the city council is already overwhelmed with B class and C class housing projects and frustrated with workforce housing developers, you might want to pivot to a luxury product if the location supports it. Or you should probably just move on. The financial reality check. Let's talk money. First rule, the hotel needs to be struggling, period. If it's performing well, the seller has zero motivation to give you a deal. You'll overpay. You'll dump capital into conversion costs and your returns will be absolute garbage. You need distressed assets, properties where the owner is bleeding cash, losing sleep, and ready to just move on. One of my favorite properties and that provide some of the best opportunities are those that are losing their flags. So, hotels that have lost their flag or brand affiliation provide excellent opportunities to acquire. What's a flag? A flag is a brand. Maybe it was a Choice property, by Choice Hotels, or a Marriott property, or a Motel 6, a Hilton, a Hyatt. It doesn't even matter. Once they lose that flag, which it's just they're franchisees, right? They had to abide by certain criteria and brand standards. Getting that flag back is really brutal. The brand comes in with a PIP or a property improvement plan, drops it on the desk of the owner, demanding massive per room investment to get back to brand standards. Most owners in that situation, I shouldn't say most, but many, don't think it's worth the cash. They probably have the capital. They're just not. And maybe sometimes they don't have the capital. They don't want to invest in their own property tremendously because it wasn't performing that well anyways. They'd much rather sell, and they would do it even on creative terms. Which brings me to financing. Seller financing, in my eyes, is non-negotiable, especially if you're brand new. Here's the deal. These properties need to be seller financed, period. Or at a minimum, the seller needs to give you 6 months to close the deal. If you're pursuing traditional bank financing, there's way too many skeletons in the closet to just buy this thing cash. Why? Because banks hate old motels. They're hard to finance, they're harder to value, and they're even harder to exit, especially when you tell them you're converting the asset class. I mean, you're going to run into a lot of problems. But for you, that's leverage, that's opportunity. Now, let's talk about the building itself. Best case scenario, properties built in the 1990s or later. Why the 90s? Well, they got fire sprinkler systems. They're already installed throughout. They're massive. That's massive for code compliance and conversion costs. These are required all across the US, especially in commercial properties, especially if you're converting to residential, to have fire sprinkler systems installed. And they're extremely expensive, anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 a door. Utility access. Look for properties with easy access utility channels. Those chases or channels running between wings where you can walk through and replace plumbing, electrical, anything. These became popular in the 80s and the 90s. And if your property has them, the renovation costs drop significantly. And that's because you're not tearing through concrete and block. I mean, these are really nicely placed in between two things of drywall. Now, let's talk about the wet wall strategy. When I evaluate properties that are primed for conversion, when you walk into the hotel room, look at the bathroom. Is there a wet wall? A wall with water lines and a drain on the side you're planning to open up for the kitchen? If yes, perfect. You're tapping into existing plumbing. If no, now you're dragging lines from the opposite wall or relocating your kitchen layout, which could be wonky and weird. Your demographic tenant may not love that, so you gotta think that way. That's time, money, and headaches that you don't want to deal with. Let me be real with you. Most of your first few deals, especially if you're bootstrapping, are going to be those old 1950s and 1960s roadside motels. Why? Because they're easy to acquire on seller finance terms. Banks won't touch them, and sellers are desperate to get rid of them, but they come with problems. Asbestos, lead based paint, shorter ceilings, outdated everything. You will have obstacles to overcome everywhere. And it seems every 5 minutes that goes by, you're running into more problems. But here's the thing, once you overcome them, you're golden. These properties are priced for their problems, which means you're getting in at a basis that pencils, and sometimes it's minuscule. Just don't pretend the problems don't exist. Budget for them, plan them, and execute through them. Imagine worst case scenario, and 9 times out of 10, you're right. Understanding the parking requirement is also extremely important. This is where a lot of people can screw up. If you're converting a hotel to apartments, your municipality is going to have parking requirements. Typically, 1.5 to 2 parking spaces per unit is the standard. In higher density areas, sometimes you can get by with 1 to 1, depending on the municipality. Sometimes you can get a variance if the city desperately needs housing. And a variance, just so you know, is kind of like the city cutting you some slack. But you have to know this up front. Don't buy it and then find out later. Walk the parking lot, count the spaces, run the numbers. Don't trust CoStar, count the spaces. If you have to get a civil engineer involved, do it. If you're 30 spaces short and the city won't budge, you don't have a deal. How are you going to figure that out? You won't be able to. You're converting undervalued assets into cash flowing apartment communities. That's the game. Thinking about a hotel conversion but not sure where to start? I offer complimentary 30-minute strategy calls where we walk through your specific opportunity, or we just chat. We talk about the industry, hotel conversion, and adaptive reuse. No sales pitch, got nothing to sell you. Just straight talk about whether it makes sense to convert the building or not. So if you're interested, there's a link somewhere down here, probably in the description. Book your free consultation. Let's chat. If you found this valuable, please drop a comment below, hit the like button, and let me know what your biggest challenge is right now with hotel conversions if you're in the game. If you're not in the game, put a comment below and let me know you're here. I'll see you in the next one.